Tanzanian Mystery Chapter 4 Dinner with Big Jim McKinley. Joseph led the stunned Mary to a small whitewashed building at the back of the main lodge. "Here is the clinic," he announced. "It's lucky that they have this place," Ned said enthusiastically, as Joseph led them into a small, cool room with a strong odour of disinfectant. "The lodge employs a doctor to look after its staff and guests. Not every hotel in the Serengeti has one, but that's why we chose this place, because my aunt was worried about being bitten by snakes, mosquitoes, lions, and so on." The doctor, a kind, plump woman named Grace, dressed in a neat white uniform, shooed the men away impatiently before tending to Mary's injuries. "You are lucky the scratches are not deep," Grace informed her sympathetically. "Although you should be more careful in future. I don't want to see you here with a more serious wound." Mary agreed and thanked her. She walked out of the clinic wearily to find that Joseph had left while the eager young Texan waited for her. "So, are you all right?" Ned asked kindly. Mary replied that she was fine, and he promptly invited her to join him for dinner. "Oh, okay," Mary replied hesitantly. "Although I should go and change first," she added, glancing again at her torn, dirty clothes. "Don't worry, it's not so noticeable," Ned reassured her. "And I think it's better for you to relax and eat something before you try walking anywhere else. You've had a nasty shock, and you still look a bit pale." Reluctantly, Mary followed him into the restaurant. Now the room was bustling with guests. Some were seated at tables or helping themselves to the delicious-smelling food from the buffet. Others were gathered in groups near the bar, enjoying a pre-dinner drink after their day's excursion. No one seemed to notice her appearance. Several guests had obviously just returned from a game drive and looked weary and dusty, which made Mary feel less out of place. As it was now beginning to get dark outside, the room was lit by several decorative chandeliers that hung from the high ceiling. "Mary!" exclaimed an astonished Scarlet. "What on earth has happened to you?" She and Matt rushed over from the bar to the doorway where Mary stood, looking with concern at her scratches and torn clothes. "Oh, she got chased by crocodiles," Jim's nephew exclaimed casually. "Hey, Ned, I thought you were bird watching, not picking up women," Travis called jokingly from a neighbor table. He sat with the rest of the McKinleys, who were also now dressed in brand new khaki outfits like Ned's, and looked as if they had stepped out of a safari brochure. "I was bird watching," Ned protested. "It's just that Mary needed help." "Oh, how kind of you. You're like a real knight in shining armor," Travis continued to joke, making his cousin blush. "Stop it, Travis," Jim interjected. "It's good of your cousin to help a pretty young lady in distress. You should try it sometime." Travis rolled his eyes and winked good-naturedly at Mary and her group. "You're welcome to join us at our table," Jim invited them warmly. He beckoned to a waiter and instructed them to bring a couple of extra chairs over. While the waiters were arranging the table, under Jim's rather unhelpful direction, Ned, Mary, Scarlet and Matt went over to the buffet. A glorious assortment of food awaited them. There were some delicious-looking African stews on one table, containing meat, beans and pumpkins. Mary added some of the pumpkin one to her plate, as she quite liked its orange colour. The next table was laden with barbecued meats, such as chicken drumsticks, lamb, goat and sausages. From this table she chose some goat meat out of curiosity, and a sausage that was curled round in a spiral shape. Next to the meat was a white substance that looked like mashed potato. A helpful sign by the dish read ugali. Mary wondered what ugali was supposed to be and decided to try some of that too. "They really have thought of everything," she called to Scarlet excitedly as she reached the next table, where she found salad, boiled potatoes, rice, vegetables and chips. The final table was decked with an assortment of fruit and cake. Mary eagerly added chips to her plate and decided to come back later for her dessert. She strolled back to the table where her new friends were seated and began to tuck into her food, enjoying the creamy taste of the pumpkin stew and the sausage. When she tasted the ugali, she was disappointed to find that it tasted nothing like mashed potato. It had a strange texture and flavour, rather like wallpaper paste in her opinion. "What is this?" she asked curiously. "Oh, it's made from maize flour," Matt explained. "It's a staple African food, similar to polenta, I guess. I think they put it there because it goes well with the stew." "You shouldn't waste your time with that stuff," Jim called over the table to Mary, smiling broadly. Mary looked at Jim's plate to see it piled high with barbecued meat and roast potatoes. He had even brought along his own bottles of ketchup and barbecue sauce, which were arranged on the table in front of him, bearing the label, "McKinley's American Sauces." "Dad, it's good to try the local cuisine," Travis protested. "You can't just eat American-style food for the whole trip." "You should see his suitcase. It's full of sauces, syrups, cookies," Larry, Ned's equally lanky brother, began to explain. "I can eat what I like," Jim interrupted impatiently while brandishing his fork. "Don't you try telling me what to do." Now, Jim's wife soothed, while Larry looked away feeling embarrassed. "Let's just enjoy our meal without getting into another silly family argument." Jim made a kind of grunting sound as he hungrily shoveled his barbecued meat into his mouth. "At least now we know the mystery of what was in his ridiculously heavy suitcase," Matt whispered across to Mary and Scarlet, making them laugh. "So how's the goat?" Ned asked Mary cheerfully. "I saw you take some, and I thought I'd see how it was before trying it for myself." Mary admitted that the flavour was a little unusual for her, although it was not too different from lamb. While they ate, the group discussed a range of topics. Mary thought the whole family liked talking a lot, apart from Jolene, who seemed a little reserved. When jobs came up as a topic, Mary reluctantly admitted that she worked at Green-Fingered Garden Supplies. Ned and Larry cheerfully explained that they worked as computer programmers, while Jolene was a kindergarten teacher, and Travis helped out on the family farm. When describing what he did for a living, Jim was in his element. "I own a large cattle ranch in Texas," he boasted. "Making a range of sauces was my idea," Sue Ellen added proudly, indicating the bottles by Jim's plate. "Yes, they are a great addition to the family business," Jim acknowledged, giving his wife a friendly squeeze and kiss on the cheek, which made her blush. He then went on to give further details about the size of his farm, the booming cattle market, how many people he employed, daily life on a ranch, and so on. Mary half listened and looked around at the others seated at his table, who were also losing interest in his monologue. Jolene was gazing dreamily at the barman, a tall, handsome man named Hassani, while the others kept glancing greedily towards the buffet. Mary noticed Travis cancel several phone calls on his mobile before standing up angrily, apparently unable to ignore the persistent caller any longer. "Excuse me, I have to take this call," he announced irritably before striding outside. Jim paused from his speech about cattle feed to scowl at his son, while Scarlet made the most of the break in the monologue to ask, "So why did you decide to come on holiday here?" "Well, Jolene suggested going for a safari," Ned explained, eager for another chance to speak. "I saw it in a documentary, and I thought it would be an amazing experience," the pretty young woman with dark wavy hair like her brother added. Sue Ellen looked into tour companies and found this place. Then Jim kindly offered to pay for all of us to come over here, Ned continued. "Oh, that is generous," Mary said warmly. "Business is good, so I thought I would treat my family," Jim replied proudly. "And Dad's always so keen to show off how rich he is," Jolene muttered, rolling her eyes at Mary and Scarlet. "Hey, I never saw you complaining when I paid for your college education," Jim retorted. "But Dad, I did offer to pay you back," Jolene protested. "Oh, it's okay," Jim replied in a more gentle tone. "Anything for my favourite daughter." I'm your only daughter, she replied with a chuckle. At that moment, Travis returned gloomily to the table. He sat down and poked at the food on his plate irritably. Speaking of paying me back, Jim began, looking at his son sternly. Any ideas on when that will happen? He took a large gulp of wine and continued to eat from the mountain of barbecued meat on his plate. I don't have it, Travis snapped, standing up again. He mumbled that he wasn't hungry anymore and stormed out of the restaurant, knocking into several waiters and guests on his way out. Is your son okay? Mr. Samuel hurried to their table to ask. He was concerned, yet also a little annoyed at the disturbance the young man had caused. Oh, he'll be fine, thank you, Sue Ellen replied apologetically, although Jim's annoyed frown and the worried looks on the faces of the other family members showed that this was not quite the case. Mr. Samuel urged them to ask him if they needed any assistance, then continued to politely check on how the other guests were enjoying their evening. Should someone go to see if Travis is okay? Scarlet asked tentatively. Oh, no, it's fine. We'll ask him what's up after we've finished eating, Larry replied quickly, while Ned nodded his agreement. The air of tension slowly dissolved as the group finished their meal, sampled the delicious range of desserts from the buffet, and finished the bottles of wine that Jim had insisted on paying for. When they were done, they said goodnight to Matt and the McKinleys, and Mary declined Ned's polite offer to walk them back to their tent. She thought of herself as quite an independent woman, and was still a little embarrassed at the way that Ned and Joseph the porter had gallantly come to rescue her after the incident by the stream. What was all that fuss with Travis about? She wondered as she drifted off to sleep in her comfortable bed.